Welcome to another episode of Raven Conversations. I'm Joe C. Mantle, State Public Affairs Officer for the Washington National Guard. And today I'm joined by CW4 Andrew Rose. He's a Military Intelligence All-Source Warrant Officer.
Yep.
Fantastic. I've known each other for quite a long time now. I think we've served together in multiple units, especially in the 56 IO. He's here to talk about becoming a all-source military intelligence warrant, as well as mentorship and how it's helped you along your path in the active duty and in the Army. So thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So quick intro and background on yourself.
Joined the Army in 2003, fresh out of high school. Not sure what I was going to do with my life. I meandered around in community college in the Running Start program here in the state of Washington. And I was doing okay. Wasn't getting bad grades, but wasn't doing great, if you will. I was essentially phoning it in during that time, and had the opportunity to go to a four-year university, but I didn't want to take out the student loans, especially if I was getting middle-of-the-road grades. So at that point, I felt that, at that time in my life, college wasn't the right decision for me to make, and it was time to go join the Army. So I enlisted in June of 2003, set off to the Army. Went to basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, with an immediate follow-on to Fort Huachuca, the United States Army Intelligence Center of Excellence, to train to be a 35 Fox intelligence analyst, which at the time it was 96 Bravo before they did the full switchover. From there, my first duty station was Fort Lewis, Washington, which is funny because most people join the Army to get away from home. I grew up in Lakewood, Washington, and
so you're back living at home pretty much?
Pretty much, yeah. So did that and got stationed with the 1st Striker Brigade Combat Team of the 25th Infantry Division. So I show up and they're like, surprise, Private Rose, we're heading to Iraq in 5 months. Get ready. So shift off to Iraq in 2004, September timeframe, and did a year over there, learned a lot. Learned a lot about myself and the way the Army operates. So it's really interesting that, you graduate high school and, within about a year and a half, you're in a combat environment. Yeah. It's really quick how that can progress. Came back at the end of 2005, spent a little bit time left on active duty and got out in 2007, not really feeling that the military was the right career for me. But I felt that, I'm glad I did my 4 years and, walked out of the Army and never looked back until about a year later when all my friends were getting called back in 2008. And, they were doing the surge in Iraq. And I was like, well, I don't want to go back to Iraq if I don't have to. But if I do, I'm going to pick my unit and not be called back under the Department of the Army headquarters saying, hey, you're going to go with this random unit. So I had a lot of friends who were in the reserve at the time. And they coached me, hey, come over and join our unit. So I joined the Army Reserve, and they kept pushing me to go to WLC, which is the precursor to the Basic Leader course. And I had this incredible fear of failure. I never at that point I never really felt that I was up to snuff. I never felt that I was good enough. And my first sergeant at the time, told me in various colorful terms that you could probably imagine. If you don't go to WLC, and then he threatened me with several threats to attend. And so I was like, okay, well, get this guy off my back. I'm going to go to the school, but I'm not going to expect anything out of myself because, this is probably going to be a hard school. Mm-hmm. And, I had built that marker in my mind that, hey, this is going to be incredibly difficult. Don't be surprised if you fail. So I was setting myself up to, not be disappointed in my failure. And I showed up. We did a layout inventory. Passed the inventory. Okay, fantastic. One thing down. Okay, well, there's still another 2 weeks where I could fail out of this. And at the end of the 2 weeks, I didn't fail out of it. I actually made the commandant's list. And I thought to myself, that wasn't incredibly difficult. There were parts that were challenging, but it wasn't difficult. And I made commandant's list. Maybe things aren't as hard as we make them out to be. And at that point, I feel like I unlocked a cheat code. Mm-hmm. And that's when I decided, you know what, I'm just going to try things. I'm just going to go for things. Because if you tell yourself no, the answer is always no. But if you make an attempt, you might surprise yourself. And so I got back to my unit, and that's when I said, you know, I'm going to pull the trigger on this warrant officer thing, because they were also badgering me to go warrant. And so I'm like, you know what, let's do this. I think I can do this. And sure enough, 5 months later, I'm attending warrant officer candidate school. Boom, knocked it out. A few months later, attended the warrant officer basic course to become an all-source intelligence technician. Boom, knocked it out. None of it was as hard as I made it out in my mind. And so if that's one of the lessons that I can impart on people who are, you know, just starting out in the military, it's do everything that you possibly can at the earliest opportunity. You want to go be special forces? Go try out. The worst that they can tell you is no. You want to go to Ranger School? Go. The worst they can tell you is no. But if you tell yourself no, it's an automatic no. So after that point, 2011, I have all my school finished. I get tagged with, hey, we need people out in Afghanistan. And so late 2011, I head out to Afghanistan and spent a year there working on really interesting assignments, doing really cool missions. Return at the end of 2012 to find out, hey, we've had, position cuts here in the reserve. We may no longer have a home for you. So we're going to figure something out, but you might want to figure out something out as well. And so that's when, I had a chance meeting with CW3 Shirley at the time. And she was pretty much my sponsor to come over to the National Guard. So she facilitated a meeting between myself and the Command Chief Warrant Officer at the time, CW5 Teresa Burgess, in order to facilitate my move over. And I said, hey, do you have any spots? And she's like, I have 10 spots. Which one do you want? And, I thought to myself, okay, well, maybe this is what I do, because, there's no home for me right now in the Army Reserve. There might be a home for me here in the National Guard. And the nice thing about the Washington Army National Guard is you're not going to leave Washington for the most part. Whereas in the reserve, if they've got a spot for you in Tennessee or Florida, but you live on the West Coast, like that, you're going to have to travel. Mm-hmm. And it can be difficult depending on, what your full-time job is, what your lifestyle is, your family situation. And so I felt that everything was lining up for me to join the Washington Army National Guard. So it took a couple of months of paperwork getting a conditional release from the Guard, but by January of 2014, I had my orders, I had my release. I'm in the Washington Army National Guard. And from at that point, I really felt that this is the first time I've had people looking out for me, other than having to look out for myself. And meeting Teresa Burgess was probably one of the most important events of my career, because she was my first true mentor in the Army. And by this time, I've been in the Army for 10 plus years. And this is the first person that I really felt mentored me. And then coming into the Guard and just meeting the community that has been built here, that's more organic, because you've had people who have served together in various different units. Like earlier, you introduced me and said, we've served several times together over the course of the years. You don't get that on active duty necessarily. You don't get that in the reserve, but I really feel more so you get that here in the Washington Army National Guard. And that's why I'm very thankful to be here, because I know that at any time I can reach out to somebody and somebody will answer the call.
Yeah. So we all have our own Guard story, and I appreciate you kind of already sharing yours a little bit.
Yeah.
But how did you learn about the Guard? We all kind of have that unique first time we heard about it.
So I heard about the National Guard in my senior year of high school. I told a few of my friends, hey, I joined the Army already. I joined on the delayed entry program prior to my senior year, and I was getting ready to ship off to basic training. And I told my friends the things that I'm going to do. Here's what they're going to pay for. Here are what the benefits are. And they started doing their own research. And I had a buddy of mine who was like, hey, man, I'm not going to go active duty, but I'm joining the National Guard. And so I looked into it at that point, but didn't think too much of it, because I've already signed up for the active duty. Mm-hmm. So what's the Guard going to do for me at this point? And didn't put much thought into it. And unfortunately, all the propaganda that I would hear from fellow servicemen were always derogatory of the Guard. They would say, awful things like, oh, we do it every day, but they only do it,
The one week in a month.
Yeah, they do it 1 week in a month. So are they really soldiers?
Yeah.
And, I carried that mentality for a while because, I'm 19 years old, 20 years old. These are my seniors telling me what their feelings are on the National Guard. So you internalize that. You internalize what, your superiors are, telling you. Oddly enough, 81st Brigade came out while we were deployed and augmented us for a while, but still, the negative opinions that people have, persist. So that was my impetus to join the reserve in 2008 because it wasn't the National Guard, because I had that internalized mentality of a derogatory opinion of the National Guard. And when I left the reserve and came over to the Guard, I was still very, very apprehensive about the National Guard. And I felt, okay, well, based upon what I've been told about the National Guard, I only have 8 years until I get my M-Day retirement. I'll just deal with it. I'll just deal with it, keep my head down, and get through. And it was the first drill weekend that I had with the National Guard. I was in Bravo Company 156 Information Operations Battalion, and the people I met immediately, I was like, you know what? This may not be so bad after all. I'm talking to people who work for Microsoft, people who work for Amazon, Google, like big corporations, and doing real awesome things that I never met people like that in the reserve. And so I'm thinking like, okay, well, maybe this opinion that I've internalized for years about the National Guard, maybe it's wrong. And after the first couple of years that I've spent in the Guard, those opinions were completely wiped away. This is an absolute 100% second to none professional organization that I'm incredibly proud to be part of. And I'll tell you what, I almost regret, as much as I'm thankful that I did, I joined active duty for the first 4 years of my career, I kind of think maybe I missed an opportunity not joining immediately in the National Guard, because the opportunities, I've had more opportunities to travel, I've had more opportunities to train than I ever received on active duty or in the reserve. I received it here in the National Guard.
Yeah. So you bring up the stigma, a little bit of that Guard thing. I dealt with it too when I joined. I joined at 18, and a number of people, when they heard I joined the Guard, they were like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, enjoy doing nothing, except for 1 week in a month, 2 weeks a year." Very similar to you. I went from graduating high school in less than, I would say, 20 months, boots on ground in Iraq. And that's just the reality sometimes of situations, especially during that time period. It was the early 2000s, and the MOBs were quickly going. And I was the first, and still, I think to this day, only one that ever went to theater from the group of people that joined the military. So dealt with that as well, heard those same things. But I appreciate you bringing that up. That's always a good one. Another stigma I think you probably deal with, military intelligence, right? We always hear it's an oxymoron. As a military intelligence officer, I hear it all the time. But you were an NCO, and now you're a warrant officer, and you're an all-source military intelligence analyst. Talk about being a warrant officer and a all-source analyst. What is it that you do?
That's the $1 million question. Everybody has it in mind that warrant officers disappear, but we're off doing important things, and you just we just don't tell people.
Drinking coffee.
Yeah. But I think that's kind of to the detriment of the MI community in a lot of cases. Like, we go behind closed doors and we work on a lot of stuff. But part of the problem is we can't broadcast what we're working on. And even if we could broadcast what we're working on, a lot of the MI community, they're so insular and introverted that they just tend not to talk about things for the most part. But as an all-source warrant officer, the all-source, I feel, is really interesting because it takes from all the intelligence collection fields in order to make a comprehensive picture. So, we take human intelligence, and that's source operations going out. We have individuals that, develop sources in whatever area that we're operating in, and they build up that rapport, build up that trust within the community. And then from there, people start informing. And they're able to take that information of what they're gathering out in a general population and bring it back. Another aspect of human intelligence is interrogation. So anytime that somebody's taken a prisoner of war, they get screened, they get questioned, they get interrogated, and we're able to take that information and factor it into our products, as well as signals intelligence. We're listening on the enemy communications, geospatial intelligence. We're taking overhead satellite photos or full motion video from drones, and we're able to take all that information between HUMINT, GEOINT, and SIGINT and put it together in one comprehensive product in order to brief the commander, so the commander can make an informed decision about what they want to do on the battlefield.
Yeah, and it's very similar to, I think, what we do as all-source military intelligence officers as well. We take that entire picture, we build it, we work pretty hand-in-hand with warrant officers to make sure it's right, and it's a good product to brief the commander. The biggest question, I think, in anybody that's in the field, how do you go about becoming a warrant officer in military intelligence?
So what I like to do right off the bat is give a website plug, gowarrantnow.com. You can, no matter what your MOS is, you can go on that webpage and you could take a look at what your MOS is and what your MOS will feed into. So most fields have warrant officers except for infantry. Infantry does not have warrant officers. And then there's a lot of MOSs that aren't feeder. So the catch-all is if let's say you are infantry and you want to be a warrant officer, there's no warrant officer field that your MOS will feed into. So you can always apply for aviation. And they're always looking for good helicopter pilots. So that's always an option. So for a military intelligence warrant officer, for all of our MOSs, so you got 350 Fox, which is all-source intelligence technician. You have 350 Golf, geospatial intelligence technician. 351 Mike, HUMINT collector. 351 Lima, counterintelligence. And 353 Tango, which is MI systems maintainer. All the requirements across those MOS are the same. You must have 3 years in the MOS. You must have 24 months of rated time. And you have to have a senior MI warrant officer writing you a letter of recommendation. So those are the very minimum. And this is where mentorship comes in. I spend a lot of time, coming in when I'm not drilling, but other units may be drilling to talk to their intel soldiers about the warrant officer process and providing them mentorship. And in a lot of cases, I do have people who don't meet the requirements. And when they inform me that they would like to become a warrant officer, I'll tell them no initially, but it's not a forever no. I feel that I owe them a pathway to success. So if you don't fit the requirements, if you don't meet the standards right now, I will set you up for success and help you get towards meeting those requirements. So it may not be today, it may not be 6 months from now, but we can set up a long-term career path for you to make your goals, especially if you want to become a warrant officer.
Yeah. So, you bring up mentorship, and it's critical. I have incredible mentors throughout my career that I think have helped me along the way, and I think it's the same it's with warrant officers, right? Especially in those younger warrants that are like just coming up. Being all source and having intel be so many different paths, it's not just about finding a mentor that's your MOS, right? It's about finding somebody who can help teach and coach and guide you along the way. Kind of briefly, describe what it is these younger soldiers are looking for or what you teach these younger soldiers when they're, when you're talking about mentorship.
I always try to tell people that, we don't ever accomplish anything on our own. And I've met several people over the course of my career saying, I've done everything myself. No one's done anything for me. Okay, well, if you're a warrant officer, that's not true. Yeah. Because at a bare minimum, you need 3 letters of recommendation. Your company commander, your battalion commander to endorse you at the unit level, and a warrant officer to vouch for your credentials. So right off the bat, there's 3 people who have, helped your career. So recognizing as a prospective mentor, you haven't done everything on your own. People have helped you. And so therefore you have, I would say, an obligation in the military to help others, because this doesn't last forever. We're not going to be in the military forever. And, I'm on the back end of my career. I'm on my back 9, if you will. I've got 5 years until my active duty retirement. I may, if the option's available, I'll do more. Or maybe the military might show up one day and be like, you're not going to be in the Army anymore. Get out. We don't know these things, and we don't know what the next day is going to take us. So it is our obligation and it's our,
kind of a duty almost.
Yeah, it's our duty. That's the term I was looking for. It's our obligation. It's our duty to leave the military in a better way in which you found it. And when I showed up to the Guard and they appointed me, hey, you're going to be the state senior MI warrant officer, I took it upon myself to go into recruit mode because we've never had an active AGR warrant officer in the MI field until me. As a result, the field suffered. And so I went on a recruiting spree and sought people out and vetted people and put them in these positions. So here in a couple of years when I leave, I'm not going to worry about what I'm leaving behind because I set it up for success, and I have absolutely no doubt that the people who are coming in behind me are going to do well with it. And that's what I mentor people towards is I'm going to need them to pick up the mantle when I take off, when I'm out of here, because I'm not going to be here forever. And that way, if I mentor them to be successful, they will keep the process going. And
Yeah.
I think that's the most important thing for mentorship is standing behind somebody and pushing them in the right direction, as opposed to standing in front of them trying to pull them.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. Extremely powerful message. I appreciate everyone that comes on and talks mentorship. I think it's a fantastic topic. We get a lot of people that we just want them to have our back, not show us the way, but give us the push to get there.
And for a very long time, I felt really lost in my career because when I was on active duty, I never had a mentor. When I was in the reserve, I never had a mentor. The way I became a warrant officer is I found a CW3 and sat with him, and I was going to give him my pitch, and he's like, "All right, if you're coming here looking for a letter, I'll write you a letter." Okay, cool, thanks. And when I went to warrant officer candidate school, there was not a single warrant officer in my organization who wanted to, hey man, you're heading off to candidate school. I just finished there like 2 years ago. Let me help you out. Let me give you some pointers. I had none of that.
Yeah.
And when I got to warrant officer candidate school, I remember receiving the brief from the cadre. And at warrant officer candidate school, you get a book called the WOCSOP, the Warrant Officer Candidate Standard Operating Procedure. And I remember him saying, if you haven't read this book by now, if you haven't read this manual, you're behind the power curve and you're probably going to fail within the first week. And I remember thinking to myself, I didn't read that manual. And I stayed up after hours that night, and I read through the whole thing. It was 30 pages. Doesn't seem like much, but when your career is writing on something, yeah, you take it very seriously. Yeah. And I didn't have that mentorship. No one put their arm around me to say, hey, here's what the next year or two is going to look like. Let me set you up for success. So because I never had that until I came over to the Guard, I never had anybody looking out for me. I felt I take it upon myself to mentor these NCOs and these junior warrant officers in a fashion in which I was mentored.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's a great message. Anything else you want to share?
No, I think we covered everything on that.
No,
I think we beat that horse to death.
I appreciate you coming on, Andrew. I appreciate you as an MI warrant. I appreciate you as a friend, and it's always great to have you come on here and talk with us about that stuff. If you're interested in becoming a warrant officer, it was gowarrantnow.com.
Correct.
We'll put that in the notes. If you like the video, give it a like. If you like the channel, make sure to subscribe for future videos, and thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.